Thank you very much. Do sit down. Right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's Member Forum. We shall start, as ever, with the safety information. We're not expecting an alarm today. Should there be one, please leave the chamber through your nearest exit and congregate out on College Green by the Cathedral. Hopefully we are all seated at least a metre apart, and there are other COVID measures happening in the background. Just to remind you, you're advised to wear masks unless you're speaking or exempt. Full details of all the questions submitted to Member Forum today and the Mayor's written replies have been published on the Council website. Questions have been submitted in priority order, and we'll go through them rotating around the party groups in that order. Each councillor has asked a maximum of 2 questions and has up to 2 follow-up questions. If you ask 1 question, you get 1 follow-up. 2 questions, you get 2 follow-ups. And we will start with Labour question 1. Councillor Pearce on social care cap and refugees. You've asked 2 questions, Councillor, so 2 follow-ups.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. This first question was about the impact of the social care cap on Bristolians. I thank the Mayor for his answer. Rather than this regressive tax on working people, what is needed instead to tackle the social care crisis?
Thanks, Councillor. So, again, we've been clear this has been an ongoing point of contention with national government. We need a long-term funding settlement that seriously grapples with the scale of the challenge that we face. It's a funding settlement that needs to enable us and other local authorities across the country to deal with the crisis as it faces us right now, but also to invest in the early interventions, and that goes right from pre-birth through early years, that often set the trajectory of people's health journey, so that we're reducing the demand on our adult social care services and our National Health Service in years ahead. Just to put this in context about the scale of funding, and Helen will obviously have a lot more detail than me on this, being the person that grapples with this challenge on a daily basis. The Health Foundation say that to stabilise the current system by 2030, we'll need an additional £6 billion, and that's at least. Their band they go up to is about 14 billion. Whereas at the moment, the Health and Social Care Levy, which will be funded by national insurance contributions, will provide 1.7 billion over 3 years, and has to be shared across all over 150 councils. So you can see that the announcements and the big numbers do not match the scale of the need and the urgency of the situation we're in right now.
Thank you. I have a second question if you need it, Councillor Pearce.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank the Mayor for his answer to my supplementary. And my second question referenced the letter that I know social services departments have received from government about child refugees. We've all heard the devastating news of the 27 people that drowned in the English Channel trying to reach the UK. And I'm glad that as a city of sanctuary, we're doing our bit to make the UK a welcoming place for migrants. In doing that, making our voices heard, that we need safe passage for asylum seekers. So that they're not forced to make that dangerous journey. Regarding numbers, is the £143 a night being offered by the government to house child refugees enough to cover the costs? And can the council introduce any other policies to help alleviate pressures on temporary accommodation? Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thanks, Steve. And this has been one of the dilemmas that we faced over the years. We've been taking on this growing migration crisis, that we are a city of sanctuary. We want to live up to that. We want to set a standard within our own city, but also set a standard to the UK. And as we see some of the kind of reprehensible behaviours of national governments in other parts of the world, we also want to be part of setting a standard on the world stage as well. But this has to be done with adequate resource. We need to be able to support people when they come here and settle, and bringing people here without the ability to support them adequately through the direct financial support we're given by national government, or reorganising our existing resources, not just the councils but the cities, would not be responsible. But we are able to reorganise to a degree, so we are able to take children here, and we've set our standards high on that. £143 is not enough. But as I said, we've then looked in-house and looked at what we can do with our city partners to make sure that we can nonetheless take, a good number, more than our share actually, that's being required of national government. We put an appeal out, and we continue to put that appeal out for private landlords to come forward with properties, for people to come forward as foster carers as well, who can come forward to offer these young people a stable home. If I can just add, Stephen, it was one of my roles up at COP with the C40 and the Mayor's Migration Council that we're also moving upstream on this. So I headed up the launch of the Global Action Plan for the Mayor's Migration and the C40, and that was looking at the Mayor's Migration Council, and that was looking at the reality of climate-driven migration, which we're looking at the potential of 200 million climate-driven migrants by the middle of this century. So the point is obviously to meet our target on emissions and limit the impact of climate change, at the same time as understanding its relationship with migration, while also putting in place more humane approaches to migration as well in the global south and the global north as well.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I thank the Mayor for his answer and his international leadership on this matter.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. We'll move to Green question 1 now. Councillor McCarthy on streetlights.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. About 3 weeks ago, I reported a broken street light in my ward to fix my street.
Councillor McCarthy, you should have had a written response to your question, so we don't need to repeat the question now.
No problem.
This is your opportunity to ask a follow-up if you'd like to.
The follow-up question. In the first question, the target you said is going to be 5 days. When that's going to happen? I mean, because you're changing contractor?
Well, that's going to be subject to the negotiations with the contractor, and obviously looking at what happens with our own budget this year, and a number of other factors that we've listed to you in question 2 that impact on our ability to prioritise this, as a job. But as soon as we're able to lock that target down and get the date on which we'll achieve it, we can share that with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up for your second question as well?
No. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We'll move then to Conservative question 1, Councillor Galandris on highways maintenance, and you have 2 follow-ups.
Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor, and thank you, Marvin, for your answers. I'm pleased to see that highways are now looking at other ways of perhaps resurfacing roads, because they've been a little bit reluctant in the past to look at new ideas. But I'm pleased to see they are now beginning to do so. I have no supplementaries.
Thank you very much. Then we move to Liberal Democrat question 1, Councillor Varney on road closures for community event. You have 1 follow-up.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor, and I just wanted to thank you personally for coming to Sandy Park Road to see the Christmas lights switch on, although we were disappointed that you didn't participate in the flash mob Zumba, but maybe next time.
Next time.
I thank Mayor Rees for his response. Since submitting my original question, I have heard from one of the organisers that they approached the council and were quoted £2,500 for a road closure, and so they decided not to proceed. Now that seems to me to be prohibitively expensive and will prevent many local community organisations from holding events, which are, of course, the lifeblood of our local high streets. So could the Mayor let me know if he can find a way to reduce those fees? Thank you.
Well, we'll have a look. I'll have to look into the detail of that. But do remember, Councillor Varney, one thing just in the language, we are the council. Everyone elected in this chamber is the council, so we're not external to it. And actually, as we do make statements about reducing revenue, we have to think about the consequences for our expenditure or ability to meet the demands of the city you know, at the moment as well. And I'm sure you, as much as I, will be dismayed with the financial settlement that local authorities get and the pressure there is therefore on local authorities to raise revenue, not least for one of the first items we talked about was adult social care. So as long as we make that kind of request with an eye to, well, where would I get that £2,500 if we don't get it from here? What consequence would it have? Then we happily talk about it. But let's find out some more detail and have a look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move to Labour question 2, which in a late substitution is going to be Councillor Jackson on Hartcliffe Way Recycling Centre. And you have 2 follow-ups, Councillor Jackson.
On the first one, Marvin, what do you think the benefits of the recycling centre would be for environmental issues?
Well, it fits within that number of fronts, but it certainly fits within the broader aim we've had to transform the city's relationship with waste. It won't solve it, but it will contribute to it. And as well as cleaning up the city streets, it's about increasing the amount of reuse, recycling, and then ultimately the point about seeing waste as a resource and then maximising the opportunity to turn waste into energy. It will also have a very immediate benefit to the community that they won't have to haul right across Bristol and go to Days Road or to Avonmouth to benefit from a reuse recycling centre.
Thank you very much for that. And my supplementary to question 2, I'm pleased we're expanding the licensing scheme ward by ward, but is there any thing in the pipeline to roll out completely across the city?
Yeah, we're certainly looking at that. Just a second, Chris. There we go. So a bit of feedback. Yeah, Chris, and I mean, as we go with the licensing, we're constantly reviewing, as you've seen in the answer as well, the impact it's had and the benefits it's had so that we progress with an absolute knowledge of, you know, of how it's going to improve the conditions for rentals within the city as well. But if we can get to we have to go pace by pace, but moving across to having that standard and using our power to enforce standards right across the city is certainly the aim of this piece of work.
Thank you, Marvin, and very good answers.
No, thanks.
Thank you. We will then move to Green question 2. Councillor O'Rourke, I understand, isn't with us this afternoon, so we'll go to Conservative question 2. Councillor Gollop on the A37 A4018 consultation, and you have 2 follow-ups, Councillor Gollop.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Supplementary to the first question, the answer is very helpful and the map is very helpful. Is it possible officers could consider sharing that information with councillors before the equipment is installed? It's simply that much easier if members are aware of what is happening rather than finding out as their residents do. Thank you.
Yeah, unless there is something I don't know about, I don't see any reason that couldn't be shared before ahead of time, Jeff. So we'll make a note of that and make sure it happens.
Okay, thank you, Marvin. And supplementary to question 2, I'm still unsure of this process of the monitoring being implemented weeks before the consultation is published to provide information to support the business case. Does that not mean that, in fact, whatever the consultation says, the business case will be put in for the proposals that are being consulted on and no changes will be taken on board? Because I do not see how those changes can be reflected if it requires monitoring equipment in different places.
I don't think it necessarily means that, but as we go into the consultation, it's a wide open door for all views to obviously influence that and to be heard in that consultation, including your own. But we'd really appreciate hearing what you have to think about the proposals.
Thank you very much. And we will move now to Liberal Democrat question 2. Councillor Clark on traveller camps. You have 1 follow-up, Councillor Clark.
Mayor, thank you very much indeed for the response you sent for my questions, or question rather. I would just like to ask you about the channels of communication with the van dwellers and the traveller community. What strategies does the council use to ensure that people are made aware of their rights and entitlements to benefits? Thank you.
Well, our engagement with van dwellers and travellers has been well rehearsed. Actually, when I was working in the NHS with the mental health team, we partnered on that whole scheme with Bristol City Council at the time. This is back in 2007 and 8, and we worked specifically with the gypsy traveller team on mental health. Obviously, you know, resources are challenged, but nonetheless, through our housing team, through our community development team, those are the ways in which we engage with people from all backgrounds. And I've actually had personal conversations myself as well. When we had some contentious issues, I reached out to people I knew who knew people, got on the phone, and we had a talk about what was going on. So I think always it's proactive, and Tom is proactive on that front. Also, particularly in light of his wider life beyond the council in his previous roles and current roles.
Thank you. We'll move then to Labour question 3, which is Councillor Bennett on heritage lampposts and COP26. You have 2 follow-ups.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Marvin, for your answer. Really welcome to hear that no heritage lampposts have been removed. There's a really important principle, I think, behind that. We've already heard about the pressures on council budgets, but it'd be really nice to see if it's possible to restore the heritage lampposts that were removed at one point in the future. Could the council explore any third-party or community-funded bids to have these lampposts restored?
Well, I do always appreciate your approach, Marley, because you bring a challenge in and you bring a potential line of solution, and that's what we're in a business of. That we'd explore anything that opens the door to a improved future for our wider city and for specific communities. So we're open to that. What I would suggest as well, if there are any particular examples that you have in mind, then let's begin collecting that, and that goes for other councillors as well, and we can keep on the list, and as and when opportunities may arise, then we can take them.
Thank you, Marvin. On my second supplementary, it's just a quick question as to how Bristol as a city and individual Bristolians can support the resolutions made at the COP26.
So I think that for me, the key thing to come out of COP was not the declarations, but it was that we begun two things were present. They weren't locked down, but they were present. One was a conversation around urban areas and urbanization. That has not happened. Cities have not been an agenda item on COP for about 5 years, which is absolutely remarkable. Seen as most of the world live in cities, climate change will be one lost in cities, and most people impacted by climate change will actually be in cities because most of the world will be in cities. Hot cities, flooded cities, and all the rest of it. So that was very positive. The second positive thing is that they began to talk about money. One of the most naive things that can be said is that all it takes is political will. Actually, it takes political will and about £205 billion to decarbonise the UK's core cities plus London. So the fact that they talked about cities and money was very strong. What was weak was that they didn't talk about cities' relationship with money. Right? They were two different conversations, and in that sense, they did not talk about how cities was accessed that money. That's been one of the gaps. So in some sense, it's hard to say how we support that breakthrough, which would be the breakthrough. Other than to say we support it and we begin to acknowledge it in our campaigning and our advocacy work. It could be supporting MPs as they make that case. It could be writing to government to make sure that they understand there is an urgent need to invest and front-load that investment in a decarbonisation of the UK cities, including Bristol, mass transit, retrofitting, bringing brownfield land sites forward for development that are in the middle of the city. All these things that we've talked about, as well as the mitigations such as flood defence for the inevitable increase in global temperatures anyway. So I mean, I think that's where the pressure needs to be at the moment. We want people to be active on a micro level or local level, but we know that what is fundamentally needed right now is system change and cities to be rebuilt. And so that's where we want the local action, but I think advocating for that scale of investment would be incredibly welcome.
Thank you very much. We'll move to Green question 3. Councillor Plowden on transport commitments. You have 2 follow-ups.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor, and thank you for your very brief answers. we've just been talking about COP26 and the decarbonisation. We know that transport in cities is absolutely key to decarbonising, and we've got a list of things which will do that. But a lot of people are worried that we aren't really moving fast enough, and we're heading more for 2.4 than 1.5 in our ambition locally. Particularly compared with other cities who don't have an elected mayor but have still taken very decisive action, such as Bath, 15 neighbourhoods, Leeds, where the CAS was put in so early it didn't actually need to be implemented because it changed people's behaviours. So what would you say to people who'd like to see a bit more va-va-voom than blah, blah, blah in our transport system here in Bristol?
Well, as always, I mean, in the world there's the world as we like it to be in the way the world it is, and you know, I mean, we've had to take some quite major action to just rescue some of our initiatives to get people onto public transport in recent years, and I mean, and so you know, and obviously to bring forward some of our initiatives. So that's you know, that's been one of the unfortunate challenges that we've had to take on. But you know, I don't think keep talking the city down is the way forward. I know this is the nature of oppositional politics and all that type of stuff, but actually, you know, bringing a bus gate in on Bristol Bridge, bringing forward the compliance date forward on CAS, bringing forward brownfield sites for housing development in the middle of the city, so that those homes will not be car dependent or even not public transport dependent. They'll be within active travel zones. All these things are massively significant. And if we want this new kind of politics in which we say, there's the problem is over there is how we decarbonise, right? Then we have to begin to acknowledge some of those things that have happened and recognise the challenges in delivering other things. We can focus on playing oppositional politics, or we can focus on taking on the challenges that we face, you know, as a city. And I would suggest the latter, as I think it will bring us a lot further forward. But yeah, on free bus travel for under 25s, tackling rat running, introducing livable neighbourhoods, bike hangers, reported on HGVs, you know, all that work's underway. We're 6 months into our second term. These things can take a time. They're challenging, but you know, we're well on our way to delivering them.
Okay, the pace is one thing. The other thing is the funding. You talk about potential solutions and not being oppositional. We've got a very clear way of raising a great deal of funding, which is a workplace parking levy. And so I would be very interested to know if the Mayor has a date for when the report will be available in the public domain and when it will be on the forward plan.
Obviously, there's a few points made in there, but I'll let those slide. I mean, we do face a financial challenge, and I think it is, again, getting beyond the naivety of all it takes is political will to look at the sheer pressure that is put on council officers, you know, the best officers, some of the best officers we've actually had at this point in time, as they face shrinking budgets, while we're asking them to meet the crisis needs, not just of their day job, but to help us take on the existential threat that is climate change as well. So we are protecting those resources to put into those areas. So that's on your point on finance. I mean, in terms of the report, I'll have to check the exact date, and I'm sure someone will be able to send it to you by email.
Thank you. Conservative question 3 is from Councillor Eddy on Imperial Apartments, and you have 2 follow-up questions.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I wish I could thank the Mayor for his replies, but I can't, sadly. He seems to actually resemble in his replies the approach of Pontius Pilate, actually excusing he's responsible for his actions. Does he defend Bristol rivaling the practices of Peter Rackman in the 60s?
I'm just thinking back over my last 5 years. In that time, I've been likened to Stalin, Putin, Pol Pot, King Jong-un, the leader of the Lib Dems, I think he was a leader at the time, referenced council officers as not being able to defend themselves by saying they simply followed orders. And now you've just added Pontius Pilate to the mix. So there's quite something. There's quite a collection of images, yeah. Yeah, that's quite something. Look, I mean, what we've said is we're not happy with the range of options that are available to tackle the housing crisis, and dare I say the housing insecurity and homelessness crisis within the city. We don't have full license as a local authority to pursue all those to pursue all the avenues we'd like to pursue. We don't have the financial support to acquire land ahead of time. We don't always have the financial support we need to bring brownfield sites all through. And sometimes our hands behind our back in terms of our ability to negotiate with developers as well. There is a broader context within which we are working to tackle our housing crisis, and that's simply what I was referring to in this answer. I mean, the deal with Imperial Apartments isn't a solution we are totally comfortable with, but it is a solution that's available to us. And sometimes we don't like one option until we saw what we didn't do. And the option, other than this, would be to have done nothing. We do the best we can in the situation we got. We have our officers monitoring the situation all the time. We're in constant negotiation with the operators, Caradon, and we're doing our best for the people of Bristol. But this is a far from perfect world, and we're doing our best in that far from perfect world.
Answer two. I repeat, do you accept there are lessons that the council should have learned as a result of the Caridian experience?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But, I mean, that's a bit of a mantra for life. You may as well ask me at the end of every year, do you think there are lessons you can learn from this last year? And my answer would be yes. In every interaction we have with any organisation in the city, whether it be in a relationship that's full of challenge or one that's full of just pure joy and benefit, there's always something we can learn, and there's certainly something we can learn in this instance.
So what are those, Mayor?
That is a third question. I'm afraid that'll have to wait till next time, Councillor Reddy. We'll move to Labour question 4, which is going to be Councillor Hume on the leisure investment strategy, and you have 2 follow-ups.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So as one of the Horfield councillors, I'm really pleased to hear about the proposed improvements in Horfield Leisure Centre, particularly because it's got a wide catchment area and serves several deprived areas. I'm also really pleased to hear about the potential of a women-only gym provision, because it will really encourage more women to use the facilities. So that's excellent news, thank you. So my supplementary question is that under its current leadership, Horfield Leisure Centre does a lot of really good outreach activity, including in collaboration with Love Horfield. And my supplementary question is, can the provision of this type of outreach activity be written into contracts with future leisure centres to ensure that this really good outreach with lots of different communities continues under all future leaderships and contracts?
That's a really, I think it's a really interesting proposition. I mean, we should approach this in 2 ways. One is, as you've just listed, there are some fantastic examples that have come from this kind of engagement. And actually, this kind of engagement will increase customers as well, which is good for the business of the leisure centre as well. So it seems to me there's an enlightened self-interest in sharing this model of community engagement out, among other operators as well. But we could explore that, because what we're saying is, in the course of doing this deal, we want the health benefits, the social benefits, the mental health benefits to be shared by the widest number of people engaging in constructive physical activity in which they're meeting other human beings and forming relationships. So I think it's certainly something we could explore. I wouldn't want to preempt what that contract would look like as we begin to pin it down, but certainly we should be thinking about how we drive that forward as best practice. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Do you have a second follow-up?
Yes, thank you. So I'm really pleased to hear about the funding to improve women's safety. And obviously this will greatly help to make Bristol a safer place for women when they're out in the city's brilliant nighttime venues. But of course we need to do everything we can to eradicate violence against women and girls at all times and in all venues, not just at night. And we need behaviour change by men to achieve this. So with this in mind, could you please provide an update on progress with achieving white ribbon status within the council, please? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And it's worth me just taking the time to thank Helen Holland for taking on the women's portfolio with Helen Godwin moving on as well, who'll be really leading on this area. So for us, we've reached out, we've got clarity on what will need to happen for us to maintain that, to reach that white ribbon status, so we know what we need to be pointing at, what we need to be putting in place. And we know that's going to be a whole range of things, isn't it? It's going to be about the outreach, the messaging, the culture change, the status of women, working for the overall status of women, personal health and social education in schools, so that people can understand what correct behaviours are. It also feeds into city design. And it was one of those points that Helen Godwin repeatedly made as well, in terms of a child-friendly city, working with Nicola as well. We were thinking about city design as how do we build safety into those major regeneration projects we have coming through, be it around Temple Quarter, Temple Meads, Western Harbour, Baltic Wharf, Broadmead, as it will come through in the coming years as well. So absolutely, we will we'll be on the forefront of that, and I'm sure if you talk to Helen, you can get a lot more detail on that front.
Thank you very much. And apologies, in the skipping around, I've skipped straight over Councillor Hartley with Liberal Democrat question 3. So we'll go back for that on polluter pays, and you have one follow-up.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you for your reply, Mayor Rees. I'm very aware of the work that the administration and Councillor Reynard specifically have been doing on behalf of Bristol's affected leaseholders, who are facing significant injustice. Unfortunately, in his response, the Mayor did not actually answer my question. Can I ask the Mayor again if he specifically supports the polluter pays amendment and if he will lobby for it? Thank you.
Lord Mayor, can I just put on record you are testing my page turning skills
Sorry about that.
and speed. Yeah, so Councillor Hartley, what we did was lay out all that we have done and are currently doing on cladding. Sympathetic to the bill that you raised, what we do want to just be a little bit careful, as has been pointed out by some national politicians, that by having such a broad catchment of responsible parties, you could end up saying everything and nothing, because it become incredibly difficult to pin some of those people down. So we just want to be a little bit cautious, not saying that we would not lobby for it and not support it. We want organisations to take responsibility for what they've done, but we have to do it wisely and not be content with the banner of saying, hey, we advocated for something that didn't actually work. Because what people in these homes need is a solution that actually works. It's practical, it's measurable, and produces real outcomes. So as I said, we're not supporting it. We just want to have a closer look at what is the best avenue we can pursue to make sure that people get the level of support they need.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to go now to Green question 4, and from then on you'll be pleased to know we're back on the list as it is printed, and apologies for skipping about. So Green question 4, Councillor Townsend on school places, and you have one follow-up question.
So thank you, Mayor, for your answer. It contradicts what's actually published in the forward plan. You're saying that the Education Capital Programme is on schedule to come for January. If that's the case, can we have that updated in the public domain? That would be my first point. And my follow-up question is, there was a paper that went to School Forum last week that states that you're hoping to get 110 SEMH specialist places between January and September 2022. Does this Education Capital Programme, is it related to those additional 110 places that were in the paper last week?
Yeah, so I'll have to check back in with my team on that paper from last week to get you a specific answer to that. But we went back to the team. We obviously, it's an area we're very exercised about, making sure we have adequate secondary school places for our children coming through. And as things stands, we will be able to bring it to the January meeting, and we can update the forward plan accordingly.
Thank you. And Conservative question 4 is Councillor Hooker on a hazardous footway, and you have one follow-up.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Marvin, for your response. I know that you're well aware of the crumbling state of the infrastructure around Stopwood Shops, and it does get patched up from time to time. I raise this particular repair because it's been neglected for a long time. I reported it over 6 months ago, and I've chased it on many occasions since then. It's in a sensitive location between the post office and elderly people's residence. So could you ensure that this is dealt with as soon as possible? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, do appreciate you raising this. And you'll know, I visited up there with Kerry not too long ago, and yeah, we recognised there were some things around the area that are less than satisfactory, particularly the churned up area in that patio outside the shops as well. There's a real trip hazard. And I'll share with you disclosure. I was sent a note to say stuff was solved, and when I went back up, it hadn't been solved. Not in a way that I would have understood solving to have happened. So we know these things happen, and what we want is a solution, right? That fix it. So the officers have been up 11 times in the last 11 months, making temporary, not temporary, patching up immediate problems, but obviously it means that they've had to return. So we do want that final resolution. I would just ask you to have a look at what you can do through your own area committee to bring this forward as a priority. One of the other answers I shared today was just about the scale of challenge we face in the city. We're an old city, we have harbour walls, we have bridges. All these things need to be maintained, and many of them are coming to end of life as well. So that's not to sidestep, it's just to say that it is within a broader context of a city with some urgent needs around roads, bridges, walls that need urgent attention. So if I can ask you to look at some of those local avenues you could pursue to make this a priority issue as well and raise the funds, then we'd really welcome that, and happy to talk with you more about the area more generally as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move then to Liberal Democrat question 4, Councillor Hopkins on Jubilee Pool. Councillor Hopkins, you have 2 follow-ups.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Firstly, I'm slightly surprised at the Mayor, because it wasn't very long ago that stuff was going out disguised as a consultation which said that Jubilee Pool was a complete basket case and had no opportunity for ever surviving under any circumstances. And now in his answer, he's saying he's got the substantial financial surplus, which now obviously things are going to be massively improved with the public looking after that, but they're going to need that financial surplus to pay for some of the investment that's not been made by this council over the last few years that's necessary for the efficient running of the pool. So will he now, instead of saying this is a standard term, will he look at this properly and take a serious attitude towards cooperating with the group who are going to be taking over the pool?
I think so. Firstly, this is obviously about provision for a profit share in the community asset transfer, and I'm sure as a veteran councillor with the interests of the council at heart, who's made the case for this being a thriving asset that will make lots of money, that you would actually say it's the responsible thing to do as a local authority to make sure that if we are going to go through a community asset transfer route, and it is going to be a very profitable venture, that we look out for the financial interests of the authority and make sure that this, this provision is there. Otherwise, it would be an irresponsible disposal of a very profitable council asset. And it's one that you have repeatedly made the case that we were wrong, and this is going to be incredibly successful. So that's the financially responsible thing to do. Again, it is a practice that we do, as well as a seasoned councillor, you'll be aware of that. There is a bar that has to be met. So if it only makes £5, Bristol City Council won't be turning up and saying, can we have £2.50, please? There will be a bar of financial performance that has to be met before that kicks in. But like I said, this is about being responsible with council assets and council resources, which I'm sure you're well experienced at doing.
Follow up to question 2. You're actually saying that if an extension is actually needed, well, given that the current contract runs out in March for the present operators, who are now doing a good job working with the community, and even by breakneck speeds that you're trying to impose on the asset transfer, that can't actually happen until several months later. Of course, an extension is going to be needed. And having spoken to the operators, they're frustrated that the council don't seem to be making any sense in progressing the extension. They're keen to get on with it. Why aren't you?
You'll forgive me if I don't bet my house on your interpretation of the conversation with other organisations in the city, rather than trusting what our own negotiators are saying or listening to them myself. So I'll hold fire on that one. But as we've said, if an extension is needed, then we'll provide the extension. And our officers will be in negotiation and making that determination right now. And if it's determined extension is needed, that will happen.
Thank you. We'll move to Green question 5, which is from Councillor Stone on livable neighbourhoods. Councillor Stone, you have 2 follow-ups.
Hello. Thank you very much, Lord Mayor, and thank you very much, Marvin, for your answer to my question. I actually found it really quite delightful and heartening when I heard that livable neighbourhoods were going to be which were being pushed forward as a pilot project in St George. So thank you very much. My question is that I'd like to know, to be honest with you, which is the second ward, because there's 2 proposals for developing the livable neighbourhoods. So what is the second ward that you have in mind to push forward the livable neighbourhood? That's my first question.
Yeah, I'm going to be very finicky on language here because I think language magic. We're not pushing. Right? That's the whole point of working with communities, to make sure we don't hand up with an idea that's generated in City Hall and pushed out onto our community. So and that's why we're taking the approach we are taking, is working with communities. So we have one. I'm not going to share the process of decision making. That's yet to be finalised. I understand there is a degree of competition, being very careful between councillors about which one will get the other one. I'm not going to break that now, but that decision will be made and we'll share it in due course.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks very much. I know I said pushing, but I actually did applaud you on your response.
Yeah, I wasn't. I'm just saying. I just want to be really careful on the language.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's it. Thanks very much. Thank you, Marvin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Then we'll move to Conservative question 5, Councillor Leslie Alexander on park public conveniences, and you have 1 follow-up.
Right. Well, thank you for the reply. Not that I'm very happy with it. I understand there weren't many responses in fish ponds to allow their premises to be used instead of public loos. And I don't consider licensed premises suitable for children, especially Wetherspoons, where they have some very challenging customers. So what plans do you have for all the disused toilets? And if they are to be sold, have they been advertised yet?
Well, I do. I mean, it is worth me going back to the rolling out of the community toilet scheme. Can I just politely ask, did you recruit any businesses in your ward yourself to participate in the community toilet scheme?
The only people I asked weren't very happy to do it. Okay.
So our wards are big, and what we repeatedly asked councillors, all 70 of us, to do was to, yes, I recognise it's a culture and a tradition of oppositional politics, but some challenges transcend that. And what we wanted to do was say, look, we face a wicked financial situation in the city. We need to meet that finance, and public toilets were part of that conversation. Now, could we all as councillors go out into our wards, use our years of connectivity, the good relationships we've built up, the goodwill we've built up over those years, and talk to businesses in the area to join the community toilet scheme? We made that appeal. Some came forward with a good number of toilets to participate in the scheme. Some didn't. And I'm sure the more of us that did that, the more businesses we would have participating in the scheme. But that's where we are at the moment in the light of our financial circumstances, unfortunately. If we did have a more comprehensive financial settlement from national government, we would be in a different situation. I started off talking about the £6 to £14 billion shortfall that's needed to meet the needs of adult social care, alone. So we just don't have at the moment the wherewithal to go and reopen our citywide network of public toilets. Unfortunately, we have to make the best of our community toilet scheme, which actually, when used well, is a very good scheme.
You haven't answered all of my question.
It was about future use and disposal.
I asked you what was to be done with the empty premises and whether they'd been advertised yet.
Well, we're not, as I said, we're not we're not doing anything with the empty public toilet. We don't have the wherewithal to run a citywide scheme of community toilets like that, so we're not going to be doing anything with it. That's why I stressed the need to spend time recruiting, using the goodwill we've built up as councillors over the time to recruit participants in the community toilet scheme.
Are the existing toilets just going to be left to rot then?
I think, Councillor Alexander, to be fair, that was you've had a response, not necessarily one you're happy with, but you've had a response, so we need to move on. Liberal Democrat question 5 is Councillor Davies, who I think isn't here at the moment. No, thank you. So we'll move to Green question 6, Councillor Edwards, on street issues, and you have 2 follow-ups.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Firstly, I want to say thank you for clarifying what the issue was with Fix My Street and for giving us a timescale for when that's going to be fixed. That's really helpful. In my first question, I also asked about refuse collection, because this is a problem that's also affecting that. So with that first question, I just wondered if you're also looking at ways of resolving this issue with Bristol Waste.
We're always looking at ways of resolving issues with Bristol Waste.
Okay.
And you'd be welcome to be part of this conversation if this is something that that interests you more broadly, which I suspect it might be. We ran a waste summit last week. So our point to Bristol Waste has been that we need to transform the city's relationship with waste. Right? Collecting waste from homes is only part of the picture. All right? Overall, what we need to do is transform the city's relationship. And that waste summit last week, when we pulled together universities, businesses, voluntary sector, obviously Bristol Waste, and academics, was about how you go on that journey. And we want Bristol Waste to be central to that. So it involves how we increase reuse, recycling in the household in the first instance. So we're minimizing the amount of waste that goes out into rubbish. It involves also how we begin to move upstream and reduce the generation of waste in the first instance. So a whole system approach. And the other point, which I thought was a very powerful one, was from Andy Street, who does a lot of work in the city on feeding Bristol and all the rest, was actually his business is waste. We need to stop talking about waste as waste. We need to start talking about managing resources. And actually what waste is, potentially, is a resource. If we use, going back to Councillor Galandra's question at the beginning, using rubber in our asphalt, for example, right? Or recycling plastic, we can be shredded and put into jet molds and given a new lease of life. So if we begin to view it as a resource, then the question is, why would you throw away resource? If food waste is for fuel, why would you throw away the food waste? So again, if you talk to Nicola Beach about that, you can have that very comprehensive conversation that includes what we do around collections and street cleanliness, but also the wider waste system. You'd be welcome to do so.
Thank you. And my second question refers to the second question, which was that the work carried out by the utility companies is randomly checked. And I just wondered if you could sort of clarify, is that evaluated to find out if that is sufficient for...
Yeah, I don't like the word randomly. And I suppose one of the good things about questions is things are raised with me that perhaps I hadn't, and they test in the organisation all the time. I don't like that word. That was the word you used.
I
know,
yeah,
I know.
okay.
But the word came to me, and there's a whole machine about our answers here, right? I don't like it. So my question back, and again, I'll be happy to share the answer with you, is what is that random? Is that a random number each month? We do one month and 35 the next. So it certainly prompted me to push back in and say, okay, well, what's the rhythm here, and what does it mean? And what are the standards around that random testing? So I've asked that question, and I'll be happy to share that with you over coming weeks when we get that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And so Conservative question 6 is Councillor Weston on CCTV, and you have 2 follow-ups.
Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor. I appreciate the Mayor's answer. My supplementary then to question 1. We are still obviously being blighted by antisocial behaviour. Now, we know it's a small group in Henbury and Brentry, and you're saying you'll try and bring forward as soon as possible the CCTV upgrades on Crow Lane, which I appreciate. Can I ask if your office could make overtures to the team doing that to make sure the cameras are able to move? Some of the delightful little charming individuals have a tendency to light fireworks on the far side of the road and then throw them onto the bit that's covered, which although it then films the bit, the landing, It's probably the throwing that is more relevant to the police. So it's just straight up, could I ask if you could make that plea via your office?
Yeah, we can do that. Why don't we just make the commitment that as and when anything is being designed, it is done with you, so it makes sure it get it right first time.
And now, Mr. Mayor, if you're in danger of taking away my second supplementary at that rate, hang on. My second supplementary then is on your last paragraph. You talk about the civil contingency team and the antisocial behaviour team. A straight up plea. Could I ask if your office could put me in touch with the people responsible for this so that I can lead directly into those conversations?
I refer the honourable gentleman to my last answer.
That's much better. It's good to have it in order, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Well, I think we've got time for one more round of questions, and if we have brief questions and brief answers, we might have time to get some statements in as well. So, Green, question 7 is Councillor Mack on street changes, and you have 2 follow-ups.
Well, I didn't think that we'd get to 7. So my question was about funding for traffic changes, specifically road safety changes, and the answer referred to SIL. When we were working on SIL proposals, we had a proposal for road safety. We were told by transport officers that SIL would never be large enough or be a strategic pot. We were then pointed towards livable neighbourhoods. I guess the question is, are we confident that SIL can cover fixing safety concerns on roads and on neighbourhoods? In my view, it doesn't seem to have been big enough, but that's the answer that I've got.
Okay, so I referred earlier on to the whole range of, things that we are required to spend money on at this moment in time, with many of the city's assets reaching end of life. But I think I guess for us to help consider it, if you could be specific about what was needed, and then we can look at the gap between what's available and what's needed, and at least put it into the list of things that we're required to do, then it can fit within that framework we use to decide on what comes before what and get it in the right order. But at least once it's designed, it's on the list.
I think we're quite clear in Lockleys on what is needed. There's a few roads that have real safety issues. A local campaign group has been attempting to meet with the cabinet member on this. Me and David spoke to you about it in the first time we met. So we're really clear on the roads that need changes, and we're really clear that SIL wouldn't cover the costs of those changes. So I'd be interested in the routes to getting those road safety changes on those routes.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest with you, when you tell you about you're really clear, I don't know what you've been clear about. So it may be that in the revolving conversations you've had, you've boiled down on 3 points. I don't know what those 3 points are. And we met, it was a Zoom conversation, and you went away to do some thinking about coming back.
Can you not remember?
Oh, were you? Okay, well, real world and Zoom world, that's the planet we're on now. So I'm not as clear as to what you're actually asking for. But like I said, if you can...
Who do we go to?
If you can put your list forward, you can send it into my office, and then we'll send it to the transport team.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Conservative question 7 is Councillor Windows, who I don't think is with us at the moment. So in the last few minutes, we'll move on to Councillor Statements. And the first Councillor Statement is from Councillor Plowden on Hillcrest School Crossing Patrol. Councillor Plowden, you have 1 minute to speak to your statement if you'd like to.
Give me a moment to find it. Sorry, I wasn't prepared for this. Basically, I won't read it out because I can't find it, but back in 2017, Hillcrest School was identified as the one school crossing patrol site with such a high volume of pedestrians and vehicles that it would have to be an exception. Because it was considered too dangerous. Since then, it would appear anecdotally that the volumes of traffic and HGVs have increased on the A37, so we're very concerned that without any consultation or any communication, the school crossing patrol is no longer going to be replaced or recruited to, and we would like that decision to be considered very carefully, please, and reviewed if possible.
Thank you very much. Councillor Statement 2 is Councillor Grant on Avon Pension Fund.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. In the wake of COP26, it's more urgent than ever that we accelerate the city's commitment to net zero. A really significant contributor to this consists of where our pension funds are invested. The Avon Pension Fund, where Bristol City Council staff pension investments are held, has made some commitments in recent months, but still holds 3% of its funds in fossil fuels. This amounts to many millions of pounds. Bristol City Council declared the first climate emergency in 2018 and should be leading the charge on divestment. Instead, we're underrepresented on the committee and to date have led no advocacy amongst other members for accelerated, meaningful divestment. As Bristol is a C40 city, I can only imagine that this is considered an urgent priority by the council. And as you, Mayor, said earlier, there are some issues that transcend party politics, and the climate is surely one of those. So since this makes most sense as a cross-party effort, be assured that there are several of us on this side of the room who are really willing to make sure that this happens as soon as possible.
Thank you very much.
Anyone hear that? Okay.
Thank you. Did you want to come in, Councillor Pearce, on that?
Yes, just quickly, Lord Mayor, can I ask the councillor to engage directly with me outside the meeting?
I think you just did.
As I'm the representative on that.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll move to Councillor Statement number 3, which is Councillor Varney. Councillor Varney, 1 minute, please.
Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor. Just over 3 years ago, I came to City Hall for the very first time on the occasion of the emergency full council debate on the Bristol Arena. The chamber was packed and speaker after speaker, myself included, spoke in support of the Temple Meads location. And the vote by our directly elected councillors was overwhelmingly in favour of the Temple Meads site. Now, in most cities, that would have been the end of it and the decision would have been made, but not here in Bristol. As we all know, the mayor cancelled the arena the very next day. I think members of the public were genuinely shocked by just how much power had been entrusted into one individual with insufficient checks and balances. This needs to end, so I urge all councillors to give the people of Bristol the chance to have their say on the mayoral system. It's time for a people's vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Varney. And we've got time for one more, which is Councillor Statement number 4, Councillor Clark.
Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor. Firstly, I would like to thank Councillor Cheney in his absence for being able to allay local residents' concern about the future of the Brislington Greenway, which is the old railway line which runs from Tesco's Callington Road to the Sandy Park Depot. This news was most welcome at the November's full council. It is reassuring for local residents to hear that the Greenway will not become a road and that there are no plans to build a road on the space. However, local residents are keen to hear what the council and WECA are planning to do to mitigate the traffic issues along the A4. Councillor Varney and I look forward to the meeting, which was cancelled recently at very short notice, and look forward to having the meeting rescheduled very shortly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes the statements and concludes member forum. So we're now going to adjourn for 15 minutes and we'll return at 1:45, please, for the extraordinary full council meeting. That's it. Thank you.